Welcome to Wolverton and Greenlease Town Council area for this year's Britain in Bloom regional judging. We're going to give you the headlines of this year's activities. There are such a lot of ways to volunteer for community gardening in the Wolverton and Greenlease area that, despite our efforts to attract more help, our In Bloom team is still relatively small. We were very pleased in March to meet Jo, who has become one of our select band of 4 now, and many others have given us help on specific projects. Tracy Pearson, the Town Council's Community Officer, has also initiated several special volunteering events which have made a huge difference to the amount of work we have been able to do this year. When we were planting up the doorstep planters with the winter pansies last October and November, we wished we had something to help move our equipment along each street. We bought a trolley that needed considerable refurbishment, and men in sheds renovated it. From March onwards, we have used our much loved trolley to transport everything we need when we're out and about in the streets of Wolverton, and it has garnered quite a few comments and smiles. Our little band of volunteers barely had a few weeks' rest after last year's visit from the regional and national judges. We were very pleased with our Silver Gilt Awards, but we're determined to improve in the areas which we know let us down last year. In August and September 2018, we began to take on the small front garden of a resident who has arthritis in his hands. He has lived in Wolverton his whole life and didn't want his garden to let down the place he loves. We cleared it of weeds and started to add in plants from our own gardens. From time to time we weed the garden again, and the latest photograph from June shows our efforts are paying off. We kept on top of a lot of other weeding during the autumn, including at the War Memorial in the square, where it was lovely in spring to see the daffodils and tulips come up. We planted winter pansies in blue, white and apricot shades in October all over the parish, and were very pleased that these lasted well into spring. A local resident donated some plants, and we decided to put them into one of the large raised beds in Bedford Street in April. On planting the hydrangeas, Amelia, whose family lives right by the flower bed, was very keen to help us water them in, and she has taken on their care along with her little sister Ellie. In spring, we were delighted to be chosen by Stony Stratford and Wolverton Rotary Club to receive a donation of £250 to help us buy more planters, and in particular reservoirs for as many planters as possible. Given last year's very hot, dry summer and climate change generally, we've been very keen to invest in reservoirs to save water and time and to keep the public displays healthy and flourishing. Over the winter months, we dedicated volunteers kept up the maintenance of several entrances to the crofts in Greenlease. These used to be overgrown and ill cared for, so over a number of years we've weeded and planted these small areas, and they're now looking quite attractive. We're aiming for an informal cottage garden look to each one, using perennial plants and, to be honest, some things we call pretty weeds. As we're on a very tight budget, we can't buy plants for these areas, but we take plants from our own gardens and from friends and relatives' gardens, and we sow seeds from poppies and foxgloves, etc. If a little wild in places, these areas are very much appreciated by residents, and they're considerably more pleasant than the neglected patches that were at the croft entrances before. We've maintained our public planters in Greenlease outside the main parade of shops, occasionally with some impromptu assistance, very gratefully received. And we've planted the summer bedding plants with renewed requests to local shopkeepers to keep them well watered, particularly since last summer was so dry and some of the plants did suffer. Residents from Fuller's Slade Residents Association also kindly offered to do some watering whenever they go shopping in Greenlease, and as you can see, the planters are consequently looking lovely. And the Greenlease community garden has been much improved. We had a lot of help from children during a blue light event organised in March by Tracy Pearson. And in June, trainees from the Herb Farm kindly helped us, planting the summer bedding plants around the street signs in Greenlease. Florrie runs the Herb Farm, and this is her granddad Jeff, also helping out, including the transporting of plants to the next sign via his mobility scooter. Tracy also organised a day in June for Greenleaf's first school children to plant up the old tyres around the Greenleaf sign. Last year we trialled using an ordinary plastic dustbin with an internal reservoir as a summer planter, and it was such a success. This year we decided to use a lot more of them. We bought many with the Rotary Club donation and also asked local businesses to sponsor one for £50 each. The sponsorship signage on the bins has been designed to match the plaques on historic buildings around the town trail, which were put up last year. These in turn were based on historic railway signs. We've also replaced a number of our original recycled wooden planters, understandably rotting in places after 10 years, with new ones made by our caretaker team, who again used recycled wood. 2 local restaurants have supplied us with empty metal cooking oil drums to use as planters, and in addition we've been given a lot of sturdy metal containers which used to contain industrial glue, and made those into planters. We have been able to afford reservoirs to put into most of these planters to keep the plants well watered. We're delighted that there's been a great uptake by businesses and residents this year, and Wolverton now boasts over 120 doorstep planters in total, making our grey streets greener and pinker than ever before. We're delighted to have increased the number of large wooden troughs around the square, with 3 new ones containing a reservoir system. Each business nearest to a trough fills the reservoir to keep the plants happy, and our youngest volunteer, Addie, whose parents run a restaurant in the square, also checks up on the reservoirs and adds Miracle-Gro every so often. We were very grateful to host 36 volunteers for a whole day in June. They came from Sainsbury's and Argos on team building exercises, and they did a tremendous amount of work, including the painting of the railings around the War Memorial in the square, tidying up the 175 years wheel, installing a new planter by the petrol station, and planting up the front section of the tapestry garden just along from the railway works entrance. Of course, our usual small band of volunteers have replaced winter pansies in all the public planters around the parish. The colour scheme chosen is shocking pink, white and lilac. Local landscape gardeners, Bridgman and Bridgman, very kindly water the planter at the community fridge and those around the old bathhouse. Local residents look after Gloucester Road and Longville street signs, and the gateway planter on Stratford Road, and all the many street sign planters in Greenleys. Bar Peace residents are still keeping their frontage looking spectacular and have spread poppy seeds further along the verge. We have also had children from the Foundation House nursery helping us and enjoying themselves litter picking and planting seeds in Victoria Park. And in March, Joe and Hannah from Don't Rubbish Wolverton organised another adult litter picking session. Local residents Cathy Ebbles, Jill Kitchen and Hannah Walton have used a town council grant to go into 3 local schools to do seed bombing with more than 200 children. This has involved the children in making soil and compost balls containing seeds to bomb and let grow wherever they think a sad corner or verge needs brightening with wild flowers. This was so popular they are wanted back next year. As always, our town caretakers Ash and Alec have been very important when mussels are required. They now have a new foam weed killing machine to use in our gutters and to try to remove graffiti, with the promise of a sweeping machine to come.
Wolverton and Greenleaf Town Council, one of the projects that we've been working on is to look at how we can treat weeds environmentally friendly. So we've purchased a weed machine which uses hot water and environmentally friendly foam, which treats the weed and kills the root using the foam. But the machine does much more than that as well. It can go around and clean chewing off the pavements, it can clean graffiti off street signs, it can just clean the general street signs. Some of the condition of our street signs has been poor over the last 10 years, so we've been looking at how we can treat that again, just effectively, efficiently and using environmentally friendly products.
A local resident in Stacey Bushes, Mr Albert Wedderburn, has taken on a grass verge that had become scarred by parked cars. He started a few years ago with 2 planters and has achieved a large and beautiful oasis of plants in various sizes, colours and interesting textures. The residence of the Elms, a lovely and highly individual arts and crafts house designed by local architect Edward Swinfen Harris and built for the railway as a doctor's surgery, kindly made a donation of £50 to our funds this year. This is another home on Green Lane opposite the Elms, and this is a lovely wheelbarrow of blooms on Gloucester Road, planted by the kind residents who also look after the lavender by the roadside. You will be travelling around Wolverton Park, but you might not get a chance to glimpse these little treasures. Here is the pond, which is fed from rainwater draining off the building that used to house the Royal Train, which is now several beautiful apartments. Before its redevelopment, the park was the centre of recreational and community activities for Wolverton and district for more than a century, as a recent film describes.
The railway main line ran through the works, and there came a period where the expansion of the works that they redirected the railway where it was, and from the works to the new line there was this spare ground. Well, when the railway was finished, this plot of land between the works and the main line was spare. Nobody wanted it because it was in a hole, and the railway set it out as a sporting ground, and then the directors decided they'd give it to the town of Wolverton.
The park was the hub, not just for sporting activities, but for other town events too, including the annual horticultural show. But the park was more than just a facility for local people. From 1886 to 1914, the major event in the park was the Whitsuntide Athletic Sports, featuring both athletics and cycling. Whit Monday was for local competitors, and the Tuesday events were open to all England, and they attracted the country's leading athletes.
One of the great new natural assets that we have enjoyed on our borders over the last few years is the opening of the floodplain forest in former gravel pits. It's managed by the Parks Trust, and local Wolverton residents Dave and Margaret Passard volunteer there.
The nature reserve was first opened in August 2016, and that's when we decided to get involved. And before we know it, we were kitted out in this uniform, and we've been doing it ever since.
We just love it because you're in the outdoors, you're doing a good job picking up the litter, and it's very peaceful.
It is. The other attraction is learning about the wildlife that now frequents this place.
The attraction of this place is the peace and quiet.
Our year ended with a visit in June from friends from our twin town of Plugsteert in Belgium, an association we mark with a special flower bed in the colours of the Belgian flag outside the town hall. We hope you can see that we've taken on board the judges' comments from last year. We're very pleased with what we've achieved, having more sponsorship and volunteers than ever before, and we hope you enjoy your tour of Wolverton.